טוב. הנושא שלנו היום, english. I'm sure I want to speak in Hebrew, but I will speak in English. Our topic tonight is Maschiach Messianism and redemption. As we all know, the concept of Messianism and redemption is very fundamental. I believe that right after the destruction of the temple and the getting out to exile, the whole idea of coming back somehow was raised in various modes. And in the long history of Jewish thought, we witness different kinds of concepts of redemption. It starts already in the Bible itself. There are different visions of the future redemption, and I will mention here, I will quote here just two of them. One is by the Prophet Isaiah, very famous verses. ויצא חוטר מגזע ישי, ונצר משורשיו יפרה, ונחה עליו רוח אדוני, רוח חוכמה ובינה, רוח עצה וגבורה, רוח דעת ויראת אדוני. So there will be a descendant of Yishai, of King David, who will be inspired by the Spirit of God, Spirit of wisdom, Spirit of reason, Spirit of strength, knowledge, and fear of God. This will be the future Messiah. And the Prophet, the Navi, continues. I jump over a few verses, and he says, והיה צדק אזור מותניו והאמונה אזור חלציו. He will judge us in justice and faith and good faith. And continuing with the very famous verse, וגר זאב עם כבש ונמר עם גדי ירבץ ועגל וכפיר ומרי יחדיו ונער קטון נוהג בם. Such a wonderful vision of peaceful nature, a wolf and a sheep are living together in the same place. How to believe? Maybe every day another sheep. But but this is the vision that the Prophet Isaiah illustrates before us. The future redemption will be led by a certain person, a descendant of King David, of Yishai, and the entire nature of our universe will be changed into a peaceful and harmonious world. This is supernatural vision of redemption. There is another vision of redemption by the prophet Zechariah. And Zechariah writes as following. ויהי דבר אדוני צבאות לאמור, כה אמר אדוני צבאות, קינאתי לציון קנאה גדולה וחמה גדולה קינאתי לה. כה אמר אדוני, שבתי אל ציון ושכנתי בתוך ירושלים, ונקראה ירושלים עיר האמת, והר אדוני צבאות הר הקודש. I will return to Zion, I will live within Jerusalem, and Jerusalem will be called the city of truth, and Har Hashem, the Temple Mount, the mountain of God, will be called Har HaKodesh, the holy mountain. But he continues and says, כה אמר אדוני צבאות, עוד ישבו זקנים וזקנות ברחובות ירושלים, ואיש משענתו בידו מרוב ימים, ורחובות העיר ימלאו ילדים וילדות משחקים ברחובותיה. What is the vision of Prophet Zechariah? There will be in the future, in the redemption time, in the redeemed world, there will be elderly people sitting in the gardens of Jerusalem, holding their sticks because of their age, and a lot of children playing in the streets of Jerusalem. This is the vision of the redemption. And he continues and says, כה אמר אדוני צבאות, כי יפלא בעיני שארית העם הזה בימים ההם, גם בעיני יפלא נאום השם. It's a miraculous verse. God says, I know that these people will be wondered to watch this vision of elderly people and children playing in its parks, in its gardens, in the Jerusalem gardens. It's unbelievable. Gam be'enai yipaleh, says God. I will be also wondered. It is indeed unbelievable. You know, our generation, your generation, who witnessed the Holocaust and all what we have passed through, understand the miracle of such simple and maybe banal vision. Elderly people are sitting in the parks and children are playing in the streets of Jerusalem. This is the vision of Zechariah for redemption. Very earthly, very natural, very rational. Nothing is above or beyond nature. No miracles. But this is the greatest miracle in his eyes. So we see here two different pictures of the vision of redemption. If we try to follow the different schools which illustrated different visions of redemption, we can speak of a school which spoke about metaphysical change. On the one hand, a mystical change, and on the other hand, we can see, as we will read right away, a more rational and political oriented approach which consider the redemption as a political process, as a political change, a realistic picture of the redemption. And this is the approach of Rambam. We will see it in a minute. But also, there are different dimensions for redemption in various schools, various philosophers. There was those who spoke, as I said, about universal, global, metaphysical redemption. There were those who spoke about national redemption, returning to the land of Israel, reconstructing Jewish nationality, independence, sovereignty, right? And of course, the highlight of this process should be the appearing of the Messiah, but also as a political entity. And there was another school which spoke about totally different concept of redemption. An inner process within the individual's soul or awareness. It's a private and personal redemption. This is the Hasidic way of understanding the concept of redemption, but not only the Hasidic way. We saw also some of the writings of Rav Soloveitchik, Rav Yosef Ber Soloveitchik, which follow this tendency. I would like to start with you with the text of Maimonides. You have it before you. Who wants to read for us? An expert in Hebrew reading to help me. Okay, please.
המלך המשיח עתיד לעמוד ולעצר מלכות בית דוד וישנה, הממשלה הראשונה. הוא בונה מקדש, ומקבץ נדחי ישראל, וחוזרים כל המשפטים בדמם כשהיו מקודם. מתחילים קורבנות, ועושים שליטים ויובלות, וכל מצוותה האמורה בתורה.
Okay. So there will be Melech HaMashiach, a king who will govern the people of Israel. He will reconstruct the government, which means the sovereignty and independence of the people, of the Jewish people. He will build the temple. He will gather all Jews from all over the world back to the land of Israel. And all the laws will return as it was in the past. Shemitah, Yovel, and all, and of course, all the sacrifices in the temple as it was in the past. This is what the Messiah will do. Let's jump over a few paragraphs, and we will read paragraph Halacha Gimel. Would you like to continue Halacha Gimel?
אל יעלה על דעתך שהמלך המשיח צריך לעשות אותות ומופתים ומחדש דברים בעולם, או מחיה מתים, וכיוצא בדברים האלו שהטיפשים אומרים. אין הדבר כן, שהרי רבי עקיבא חכם גדול משנה היה, והוא היה נושא כליו של כוזיבא המלך, והוא היה אומר עליו שהוא המלך המשיח. ודמהו וכל חכמי דורו, שהוא המלך המשיח עד שנהרג בעוונות. כיוון שנהרג, נודע להם שאינו משיח, ולא שאלו ממנו חכמים לא עוד ולא מפת.
Well, Rambam warned us not to even think of the Messiah as if he has to make miracles in order to prove his the validity or the authority of his kingdom. He doesn't have to bring the dead from back to life. He doesn't have to do any miracles, muftim, and so on and so forth. And the proof is to this idea, Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva himself thought that Bar Kokhba was the Messiah. He believed in him. And just after the failure of the war, of the rebellion, and Bar Kokhba died, he was killed, only then Rabbi Akiva understood that Bar Kokhba is not the Messiah. And nobody complained about his mistake, about Rabbi Akiva's mistake. Okay? He thought that Bar Kokhba was the Messiah. Which means that he doesn't require any miraculous criteria for the Messiah. The Messiah is a regular person who will appear in a certain time and will lead the people of Israel towards their redemption. It's a political process. And what does he say? He continues in Halakha Dalet, ואם יעמוד... בבקשה.
ואם יעמוד מלך מבית דוד, חוגג בתורה, ועוסק במצוות כדוד אביו, כן? כפי תורה שבכתב ובשער בעל פה, ולכוף כל ישראל ללך בה לחזק
בדקה,
וילחם מלחמות השם, הרי זה בחזקת שהוא משיח. אם עשה והצליח וניצח כל האומות שמסביביו, הוא בנה מקדש במקומו, וקיבץ נדחי ישראל, הרי זה משיח בוודאי.
Okay, so what does Rambam say? He says that if there will be a king from the house of David, and he will be a Torah scholar, and he will force the people of Israel to accept the Torah and to follow the rules, the laws of the Torah. And he will fight, he will lead the wars of the people of Israel. וילחם מלחמות השם. He will fight for the people of Israel. הרי זה בחזקת שהוא משיח. We can assume that this person is probably the Messiah. If he really succeeded in this, and if he won all the nations surrounding Israel, and if he built the temple in its place, and if he really gathered the people of Israel from all over the world to the land of Israel, הרי זה משיח בוודאי. This is the absolute and ultimate proof that he is the Messiah. Now, לא יכול להיות?
בגלל שגם דוד, בסופו של דבר לא בנה את המקדש, בגלל שהוא לחם.
Okay.
Translate
But, you know, yeah.
Translate what she said in English.
Yeah, she said that it can't be because King David himself couldn't build the temple because he fought, and he
fought too much. Because he fought too much, not because he
too
fought.
much, because Yadech Damim Alev, right? And therefore he cannot build the temple, which symbolizes peace. You know, we built the מזבח אבני גזית, לא תבנה את הן גזית, אבנים רגילות, regular stones, which are not polished, right? In order not to use iron on the stone while building the temple, because iron symbolizes war and killing, and the temple, of course, symbolizes peace. In any case, if it comes to our days, and there are people who argue that a certain person is the Messiah because he fulfills some of the criteria here, you know, there are some who argue that the Lubavitcher Rebbe was the Messiah because he really fills some of the criteria. Some, right? But I can argue that there is another David Ben-Gurion, who filled even more of these criteria, since he learned the Torah in Israel. He fought for the people of Israel and led our wars. He won all the countries surrounding the little state of Israel in 1948. And he gathered many millions of Jews from all over. So at least Bechezkat Mashiach according to Rambam.
No, but he was not Shalom Mitzvot. He was not Oisek the Mitzvot, but Shalom Mitzvot.
Well, you can argue, it's just a provocation from my side. But I'm not arguing that he was even Bechezkat. But according to these criteria, and what does it mean to observe the mitzvot? Some of the mitzvot he observed for sure, because I don't know anybody who doesn't observe any of them, right? Kibud Avein, you know, Milut Chasadim, Tzedakah, you know, and nobody, I don't know anybody who observed all of them. So somehow in between we can agree that he at least meets some of the criteria, but I don't argue really that he was the Messiah, not even Chizkat. But just to emphasize the approach of Rambam, which argues that the Messiah is a normal person, is a political leader, and the process of redemption is a regular, normal, historical, political process. We speak of real reality, normal reality, no metaphysical change, no supernatural change in the world. And he says, chapter 12, if you look down, please, would you like to read? Or I will help you. There is another volunteer? Okay, please.
אל יעלה על דעתך שבימות המשיח יבטל דבר ממנהג העולם, או יהיה שם חדש במעשה בראשית. אלא עולם כמנהגו נוהג, עד שנאמר בישעיה, וגם זאב עם כבש ונמר עם גדי ירבץ.
משל וחידה.
משל וחידה. עניין הרבה
שיהיו ישראל
יושבים לבטח גם רשעי אומות.
עם רשעי אומות. המשולים כזאב ונמר. So he relates, Rambam relates to the verse from Yeshayahu, right? וגם זאב עם כבש, about the wolf and the sheep. And he says, well, this is just a metaphor. It's not really a vision of changing the nature of the world, of the animals. It's just a metaphor, and the wolf is a metaphor for the wicked nations around us, right? That we are the sheep, and we will be able to live with them in the future. Okay? Hopefully. So, this is one approach, and I think we will stop here. We can continue with the Rambam, but you understand the basic attitude of the Rambam, and this is one of the major trends in Jewish thought in regard to redemption. As I said, there was another school which spoke about the national redemption. Coming back to Israel, to the land of Israel, re-established the Jewish state, and reconstructing our sovereignty. With all its ramifications, of course. And the question is, what are the ramifications of having a Jewish state? What does it mean in terms of the ideal redemption, national redemption? What does it mean to have a Jewish sovereignty? You know that in the 19th century, where all the national new states, modern states, were established, it was very attractive to be nationalist. But later on, in the beginning of the 20th century, and what we have seen in the 30s and the 40s, the whole concept of nationalism was challenged and died because of the extreme radical streams in European nationalism, especially in Germany, of course, but not only in Germany, in Italy and other places. And Rav Kook, who lived at the end of the 19th century, the beginning of the 20th century, related to these philosophical streams and trends. And I'd like to quote for you a very short paragraph where he discussed the ideal of a Jewish state in the future. And he says, אין המדינה העושר העליון של האדם. You see it? It's in front of you. אין המדינה העושר היותר עליון של האדם. The state, the national state, is not the highest ideal, he says. זה ניתן להיאמר במדינה רגילה, שאינה עולה לערך יותר גדול מחברת אחריות גדולה. This, what we have just said, that the national state is not the highest value, the highest ideal of man. This is relating to a regular state, since a regular state is not more than a big insurance company. The liberal state is, in a way, an insurance company. We pay taxes in order to get back some benefits from this company. Security, health, healthcare, education, infrastructure, whatever. And there is a kind of an agreement between the citizens and the company, the state, how to manage and to ensure the mutual interests of the citizens and the company and the state. This kind of a state does not contain values, and therefore it cannot be the highest ideal of man. But this is not the case with the Jewish state, he says. מה שאין כן, if you continue to read, מה שאין כן מדינה,
מה שאין כן מדינה
שהיא ביסודה אידיאלית,
שחקוק בהווייתה התוכן האידיאלי היותר עליון, שהוא באמת העושר היותר גדול של היחיד. מדינה זו היא באמת היותר עליונה בסולם העושר, ומדינה זו היא מדינתנו, מדינת ישראל. יסוד כיסא השם בעולם, שכל חפצה הוא שיהיה השם אחד ושמו אחד, שזהו באמת העושר היותר עליון.
So, what does he argue here? He says, our state, and he wrote it in the early 30s, much before, long before the establishment of the State of Israel, nobody spoke yet about the name Medinat Israel. There were various proposals what should be the name of the future State of Israel. But the real name, Medinat Israel, as he writes here in Hebrew, Medinat Israel, he wrote it long before anybody has decided to call the state this way. In any case, he says, Medinat Israel, the state of Israel, is a different case. Is not the regular state which is considered to be a big insurance company. Why? Because Medinat Israel contains a whole set of values. It is established on values. Its very fundamental goal is to fulfill and to implement values, ideals. And the highest ideal is, of course, שיהיה השם אחד ושמו אחד, right? To unite God and His name, which means it's a metaphor for universal or cosmological harmony, peace, right? There's no divisions. Hashem echad u'shmo echad. Everything is one. Everything is united. So it's a great vision that the State of Israel, in his mind, in his vision, should fulfill. And this is the State of Israel all about, in his mind. Therefore, this state is not an insurance company, because it becomes an instrument for implementing and developing and creating a society of values. If I may translate it into another language or formulation, I would say that the State of Israel is the fruit, the outcome of the collective effort of the people of Israel. And a collective creation usually reflects the values and the beliefs of the people who create the collective creation. Right? So in a way, the State of Israel, according to his mind, according to my interpretation of his mind, okay, is a cultural creation. It has values. It's a valuable creation and not just a political entity. It's not just a political instrument to achieve political or economical goals. The goal is to create a just society, a faithful society, a believer society, right? And this is the goal of the state, which is usually not the goals of a liberal state. There is a distinction in a liberal state between the role of the state and the whole realm of the citizens to the whole space of the citizens as individuals to act, to educate themselves, to choose their way, to choose their beliefs, to choose their whatever they want to do in their lives, right? But here the state has a very central role in educating the people. And this is not the case of the liberal state. So he, of course, adds here a metaphysical and mystical dimension, because he says that this Medinat Israel, pay attention to this expression, ומדינה זו היא מדינתנו, מדינת ישראל, יסוד כיסא השם בעולם. This Medina, this state, is Yesod Kiseh Hashem Ba'olam, the foundation of the divine chair. Right? It's, in a way, another expression for arguing that Medinat Israel, not just Eretz Israel, but the entity of the state is, in a way, a metaphysical revelation, a metaphysical manifestation. It's equivalent, if you wish, to Sfirat Malchut, which is a very courageous argument in his surrounding. Okay? It is very, very far-reaching argument. So, okay. In any case, if you look in the other page, you will see a paragraph from Rav Soloveitchik, and we are moving ahead as a journey, in the path of Jewish ideas along the history. And Rav Soloveitchik, in his article about redemption, prayer, and Talmud Torah, argues, Magi Geula, you see the first chapter? Magi Geula, what is redemption? גאולה היא תנועה של יחיד או קהילה מן הפריפריה של ההיסטוריה אל מרכזה. או אם נזקק למונח בתחום הפיזיקה, you can explain it to us, גאולה היא תנועה צנטריפטלית שואפת למרכז. I will translate it. Redemption is a movement of the individual or the community, or a community, from the periphery of history to the center of history. In an unredeemed world, the individual or the community lives in the periphery of history. They don't act. They are not active. They don't have any impact on history. They are not influential. They are not involved in determining their fate. They are passive. Other people, other nations, other rulers determine their fate. They are in the periphery of history. According to Soloveitchik, redemption is a movement of this individual or the community from the periphery of history to its center. He continues, מי הם בני אומה או קהילה יוצרי היסטוריה? Who are the ones of a nation or a community who create history? אומה יוצרת היסטוריה היא זו המתקיימת קיום של דיבור, סיפור, קשר הדדי וחירות. A nation which creates history is a nation which has a speech, which has a story, a narrative, which has a mutual connection and freedom. We should explain it a little bit. He says, he argues that in order to be redeemed, we should have a language. We should be able to speak. We should be able to communicate, to transfer, to transmit our ideas, our vision, our concerns to others who are interested in us. We are surrounded by people who are interested in us. We have a story to tell, and they are interested to listen. A person who don't have audience, like you, cannot be redeemed. A person who has nobody to tell a story, nobody to speak to, is not a redeemed person. A person who remains in silence is not a redeemed person. He is not free. Freedom means to be active, to speak out. Let's turn to the other page. It says, גאולה זהה כאמור עם התקשרות הדדית, עם התגלותה של המילה, כלומר עם הופעתו של הדיבור. Do you have it? Geula is identified with mutual communication, with the revelation of the word, with the appearing of the speech. משעה שעם נוטש עולם אילם, ובא בעולם של קול, של דיבור ושיר, הוא נהיה לעם נגאל, עם בן חורין. במילים אחרות, חיים אילמים זהים לשעבוד. חיים שכוננו בדיבור, חיי חירות הם. Which means a nation who is getting out of a dumb world and entering a world with a voice, with a speech, with a song is a redeemed nation. And he continues, the Eved Chai Bidmama, the slave, is living in silence. אם ניתן בכלל לכנות קיום נטול משמעות מעין זה בשם חיים. The slave is living in silence. If we can call this kind of living without any meaning, any significance, we can call it at all life. Right? So this is a turning to another direction in understanding the concept of revelation. But Rav Soloveitchik was not the first one to turn to this path. I would mention here a very known, at least here, in this place, in this country and these countries, I mean in Central Europe, a very famous Jewish German philosopher, Franz Rosenzweig, who wrote a great book, The Star of Redemption, Der Stern der Erlösung. And he has developed a new, different concept of redemption. You know, have you heard about the book? Have you read the book? Some of you. The Star of Redemption is the paradigm of the Magen David, which is the Jewish star, which has 6 different corners, 2 triangles, and Franz Rosenzweig explains what does this star, the Star of David, the Star of Redemption, actually symbolizes. As I said, it consists on 2 triangles. One triangle symbolizes 2 different fundamental elements in our world. Along the history of religion, along the history of ideas, there were 3 major elements, foundations, to which people relate in their writings, in their thoughts, in their behavior. One is, of course, God. One is man. And one is the world. God, man, and the world. This is one triangle. Rosenzweig argues that along the history, in the beginning there was a dialogical relationship between the 3. But along the history, this dialogue has stopped. I don't have the time to explain the whole background of this idea, why this dialogical relationship has stopped. People did not speak directly to God. God did not respond anymore directly. People were alienated from nature along the history, were not close anymore with an intimate relationship to nature, and so on and so forth. The whole world was alienated from itself. And the concept of alienation, nikur in Hebrew, alienation, is, in a way, a modern concept. This is the human condition in the modern time, not only in the modern time. If you read Kafka, and if you read Albert Camus, and if you read Jean-Paul Sartre and others, you can see what does it mean to be or to live in an alienated world, or alienation. So, Rosenzweig says that Judaism has the right and the appropriate response to this human condition, to the alienation. The condition of alienation is the condition of an unredeemed world. We are lonely, we suffer from loneliness, from separation, from alienation. And Judaism has the right answer, the right response to this condition. By adding to the three fundamental elements another three. This is the second triangle. The second triangle is a relationship between God and the world through the concept of please. No. The relationship between God and the world through creation. Bria. The relationship between God and man through the concept of revelation. And the relationship between man and the world is the concept of redemption. This is the star of redemption, der Stern der Erlösung. But how? How come? The argument says that God reveals himself to man. God reveals himself to man. And man, by responding to God's revelation, redeems the world. You understand? I will explain it. Instead of a condition of alienation and separation between God and the world, between God and man, between man and the world, we create a new world of relationships. Relationships. The concept of creation is not a cosmological concept. It is a concept of relationship. There is relationship between God and the world. We don't argue any specific metaphysical, cosmological, physical, biological, whatever way in which God has created the world. This is not the case. This is not the essence of the argument. The essence, the content of this argument is that we argue that there are relationships between God and the world. What is the essence of this relationship? We have to discuss it, we have to study it, we have to understand it. But it's all about relationship. God remains mysterious, above and beyond any understanding, and the world remains above and beyond our understanding as an essence. All what we have is relationship between God and the world, and also between God and man. It's interesting that Rosenzweig argues that The first and most significant commandment in the Torah is what? No.
או מעץ הדעת תאכל.
No.
החודש הזה לכם.
No.
What was your question again?
What is the most important commandment in the Torah?
אנוכי השם אלוהיכם.
You are close to it. ואהבת את השם אלוקיך. ואהבת את השם אלוקיך. And he explains why. He explains why. This is the basis, this is the foundation for the entire system of relationships. He says, he asked actually, how can one demand the other to love him? Is it reasonable? Try to imagine you are walking in the street, in Bahnhofstraße, and somebody is approaching you and demanding you, please love me. You will escape from him, as fast as you can. It's irrational. What does it mean for someone to ask or to demand the other to love him? But Rosenzweig says that it is very natural and very reasonable for one who loves the other to demand the other to love him. Between a married couple, man and woman, there are some, speeches about love, and the man asks the wife, although he knows already, do you love me? Tuvia the Melchiger? Do you love me? For sure I love you. I cook for you, I bake for you, I clean your clothes, for so and so decades. Now you ask me whether I love you? Of course I love you. But you understand that it is natural for the lover to demand the beloved one to love him. It's in a way not a demand at all. It's in a way an expression of his own love to the other. If a person who loves the other demands the other, love me, it means that he loves him or her, right? So Rosenzweig says, why do I observe the mitzvot? Because God applied to me and demanded me to love him. Therefore, I know that he loves me. And if he loves me, if God loves me, I cannot ignore. I cannot deny it. I cannot be indifferent to this kind of application, to this kind of relationship. God loves me, so I must love him. I must return.
Why? I don't see that.
He speaks as a lover. He speaks as a poet. It's not,
But as I said before, if somebody comes to you on the street and tells you, I love you, you're escaping. So I think the only truth lies that it's God, because God is the truth and God is the man. That's why you want to answer him and you want to give him the love back.
I understand what you're arguing, and in a way you're right. But Rosenzweig argues that the most fundamental basis and justification for our observance of the mitzvot is the love of God. God loves us, and therefore we return love to God by accepting his commandments, by fulfilling his will, his demands. And by doing that, we respond to the relationship. We create a mutual relationship with God. And we are not alienated anymore from God. Not because we know God. Not because we got, a prophecy. The very fact that we feel that we are obliged to observe the mitzvot since God loves us, it's a kind of a revelation. If I feel that I cannot prevent myself from observing the mitzvot, I cannot do anything else, I must do it, this is my feeling, it's a kind of a revelation, because it is not rational, as you say.
It's also a process to get
It's a process, but to reach this stage of confidence that this is the state now, that this is the relationship between me and God, that I must fulfill the mitzvot, this is the highest level of revelation. To be sure that you have to fulfill the mitzvot, you cannot ignore, you cannot turn away from it. Right?
Well, it gives you meaning.
It gives you meaning, exactly. And now, it redeems also the world, the nature. Why? Because in the former type of relationship between man and the world, man and nature, the nature for man was an object, not a subject, not a subject. Right? Nature was an object, and man related to the nature, to the world, as an object for using it, for studying it, for researching it. The only subject was man. And all the others, including human beings, including man himself when he was studying himself. He went out of himself in a reflective action, right? And considered himself as an object for research, for analyzing, for analysis. So, in the new type of relationship, when I am commanded by God in this world, I cannot relate to the world as I wish. You see? I cannot. I cannot relate to God. I cannot relate to God as I wish. I cannot do in the world, to the world, sorry, not to God. I cannot relate to the world as I wish. I cannot do whatever I want in order to use or abuse the nature. I have to act in nature, within the world, in light of certain rules, values, and commandments. I'm commanded by God to act in a certain way in the world, and therefore I create a new type of relationship with nature, with the world itself, not as an object anymore, but as a subject, which is a partner with me in serving God, in improving the world. And this is the complete star, the two triangles. The first one, three fundamental elements, God, man, and the world. The second triangle, relationships, creation, revelation, and redemption. And this is the star of redemption. But now pay attention to the implication of this thesis. world? Man. We can say nothing of God. God is above and beyond. We can only speak of our decisions, our will, our actions in the world. By responding to God, we create relationship with God. By acting in the world in light of God's will, we're redeeming the world. We're creating another set of relationships. But man is the center of all this enterprise. This is a beautiful scene. A beautiful scene from the point of view also of architecture. He illustrates Judaism as a very, very abstract concept into a diagram of the Star of David, which summarizes the entire Jewish thought. Well, I taught here, I think, within 5 minutes or 10, the entire Star of Redemption, the Stern der Erlösung, which is a very, very difficult and complicated book. I tried to make it simple, but this is, as you see, another approach, a modern one, an existentialist approach to the concept of redemption. A personal and inner feeling or relationships between various elements. We don't know God, but we have relationship with Him. All what we know of God is our relationships. Right? It can be applied also to the relationships between human beings. Right? I can never know totally the soul of the other with whom I have relationships. All what I know is what I'm experiencing. I experience from our relationship. What I feel in these relationships. Yes, please.
And the fulfillment of mitzvot, how does that fit in?
The fulfillment of the mitzvot is indeed the way to redeem the world. This is the response, the human response to God, to God's love. By fulfilling the mitzvot, I redeem the world. For example.
Because that's what God wants us to do.
Right, for example. You know that in our religious approach, or halachic approach, what Rosenzweig called the Orthodox approach, there are 3 different categories. There is Isur, there is Mitzvah, and there is Heter, which means there are things which are prohibited, there are things that we are obliged to do, and there are things which are neutral. We are not obliged to do them. They are not prohibited. There is a heter, a whole area, you know, a whole space of heter. For example, we can hear it quite often. Rabbis or educators who will argue that there is no any mitzvah in playing football. But it is not also prohibited, right? You can play football if you want. Rosenzweig argued that this approach is not right. Because if something is right and ought to be done, it is a mitzvah. And if it is not right, you shouldn't do it. There is no neutral area, right? So the mitzvot according to Rosenzweig are not only the written, concrete mitzvot, but there are much more mitzvot who are not written. But you are obliged to fulfill them because there are so many things that you feel obliged to do, although they are not written in the Shulchan Aruch. And if this is the case, if you feel obliged to do them, you cannot remain indifferent, right? You have to do it. So it's a different, again, a different approach. You know that Rosenzweig was a Baal Tshuva, and he, in the beginning, did not fulfill all the mitzvot. And step by step, you know, slowly, he observed more and more and more. But what was his criteria for observing the mitzvot? His criteria was not what is written in the Shulchan Aruch. His criteria was what he feels that he cannot avoid, that he cannot prevent himself from doing it. He started to observe Shabbat, for example, right? And he didn't make melachot or isurei melacha and so on and so forth. But he understood the nature of Shabbat, the idea of Shabbat, as a day of rest, as a day of, you know, a social day, to gather the family, to gather friends, to visit friends, to talk with friends, and even to write letters to friends. So he wrote letters on Shabbat to friends, not on business affairs, but not professional affairs, but, you know, igrot yedidut, friendship letters. But later on, he felt that writing letters on Shabbat, even for this cause, which is very nice and positive, really violent his experience of Shabbat, the spirit of Shabbat, the harmony of Shabbat. And he could not write letters anymore. So he felt that he must not write. This is a revelation for him. It's Ma'amad Har Sinai for him. Right now he received this mitzvah. Beforehand, he didn't receive it. It was a dry written law in the book. But as a commandment, as a mitzvah, which applied to him personally, he just revealed it now. Right? And he started to observe fully all the halachot of Shabbat because he couldn't be Mechalel Shabbat anymore. The same was with Kashrut and so on and so forth. So he passed through a very personal and existential path towards full observance of the mitzvot, but when he observed the mitzvot, it was very serious.
Which is very nice. Now we have the Nasa Nishma, but he then had the other way around. So it's a nice experience, but that special thing that we do is without understanding that we can do.
He did not speak of understanding. He did not speak of understanding. He spoke of ability. What I can observe, what I cannot. And cannot means not that it is difficult for me. I cannot identify with it. I don't feel it. And when he felt it, he did it.
This is not religion.
Pardon?
This is not our religion. Actually, this is religion.
מתוך שלא נשמע.
No, philosophically, I mean, I think the religion, okay, the whole discussion about religion, what is the religion about? I think this is, I have to repeat what he said. I'm asking with him what he said, that religion is a law which you should hold in concrete what Rosenzweig said, and not only the feeling, you don't get through the feeling to it. The feeling actually, what I think the religion wants from you, is that you Nase V'nishma, you do it, and this doing, the feeling and the good thoughts and the relation comes with practicing the religion. So this is the...
You mean ספר החינוך, right? אחרי המעשים נמשכים הלבבות.
כן,
right. Well, he wasn't fan with ספר החינוך. Yeah, please.
What is missing from, maybe you're going to continue talking about, but I think what's missing from this idea of redemption is the national component. This is the purely individual.
Yeah, so just by accident I brought to you another text. And I will read it for you.
Can I ask a question before? Because it
Yes.
relates to what you just said.
Yes.
About the redemption. I was wondering if he was discussing his ideas with Christian theologians, or if he was influenced by Christian theologians. It seems to me that Protestant thinking is similar, you know, that the belief changes man.
Right. Yes, indeed, he was very influenced by Christians and by Christian theology. In his early period, he intended to convert to Christianity, and he, you know the story of his experience in Yom Kippur. It's an amazing story. He grew up in a very, secular family, and he looked for meaning. He was searching for meaning, for religious, spirituality. And he did believe that he will find it in Judaism, since he knew the Yekish synagogue of his parents to the synagogue that they didn't go, only on Yom Kippur and high holidays, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And everything there was very, nice and official and good and nice order, and everything was in place, and nobody could say Kaddish unless the Gabbai invites him to the front of the synagogue, and so on and so forth, and everything, and the Chazan and the choir, and everything was very beautiful, but it was cold for him. It was very cold. And he didn't believe that he will experience a spiritual experience in this place. Moreover, you know that Christians related to Judaism as a religion of the law. Formal laws and not spirituality. And he was influenced by these Christians. Immanuel Kant, the famous German philosopher, a colleague of Moses Mendelssohn, argued that Judaism has no spirituality, has no spirit at all, only laws. Right? So he intended to convert to Christianity together with his cousin and some other friends, but he understood that Christianity is somehow the daughter of Judaism, and he wanted to move to Christianity while not leaving Judaism, but to his mind to upgrade his Jewishness by converting to Christianity. And therefore, he wanted to do it in a symbolic way, to turn to Christianity after participating in the davening in the shul in Yom Kippur. And he told his mother that this is his intention. And she was very angry at him, although she wasn't too observant, too religious, but to leave Judaism, to go to Christianity, it's a betrayal. You shouldn't do it, and I will not let you go to synagogue on Yom Kippur with this aim, with this goal. And I will tell the Gabbai not to let you enter to our shul. So he moved to another town in Germany and found a small shtibel of Ostjuden, Hasidim, and he spent Yom Kippur with them and passed through such a spiritual experience that he couldn't even describe. And right after Yom Kippur, he wrote to his cousin Ehrenberg. He wrote to him, I don't need to leave Judaism anymore, and therefore I cannot. And he remained Jewish and started to learn with Rabbi Nobel. He became a chavruta of Rabbi Nobel and really became a real knowledgeable Jewish thinker. But he passed through a very interesting path. Very serious, very sincere, very sincere. Probably not Orthodox, but very Jewish. So you asked me about the national redemption. As you know, the rising of Zionism in the 19th century was parallel to the rising of various national movements in Europe. And there were few scholars, historians, and scholars of political science, for example, like Shlomo Avineri, Professor Shlomo Avineri, and others, who argued that Zionism has nothing to do with classical Judaism. Zionism is a rebellion against Jewish tradition. That Zionism is a modern political ideological movement to construct Jewish nationalism in modern means, in modern realities. And I think if you look very carefully, and we read carefully, the text of the great Zionist thinkers, and I don't speak of the religious Zionist thinkers. If you read Herzl, Theodor Herzl, if you read Achad Ha'am, if you read Aaron David Gordon, if you read Ber Katzenelson, if you read David Ben-Gurion, you see to what extent do they feel connected to classical Judaism? To what extent do they connect Zionism to the classical Jewish dream to be redeemed and to come back, to return to the land of Israel and to reconstruct the Jewish state? They don't speak as modern nationalists. They all rooted and anchored their teachings in classical Jewish texts. And I brought something from David Ben-Gurion. I will read it for you. David Ben-Gurion and Berl Katzenelson. I'll read a few sentences. אין ספק, he says, כי בלי הכוחות שקיימו את היהדות בגולה, לא היו מגיעים לתקומת ישראל. There is no doubt that without the powers which maintained Judaism in the exile, pay attention to the very fact that he uses the word Gola. Today, we are not allowed anymore to use this word. If I go to America and I speak of Gola, I'm, right away, Gola. Even diaspora is not the politically correct word anymore. There is a change in the terminology which reflects a change in ideology. In the past, we used to speak of Gola because Jews really felt that they are living in Gola, in exile. Today in America, later on they spoke not of Gola but of diaspora, Tfutzot, diaspora. This is not really so bad as Gola. Today even diaspora is not politically correct, because diaspora means that there is a center which is Israel and there is a periphery which is the diaspora, and this is not politically correct. Today we speak of world Jewry. Have you heard this concept?
Yes.
World Jewry. So world Jewry, there are Jewish communities all over, including in the state of Israel. And the state of Israel is another very significant Jewish community, if you wish. But, okay. But let's go back to Ben-Gurion. אין ספק, he says, כי בלי הכוחות שקיימו את היהדות בגולה, לא היינו מגיעים לתקומת ישראל. There is no doubt that without the powers which have maintained Judaism in the Galut, in the exile, we would not reach the reconstruction of Israel, the independence of Israel, תקומת ישראל. לא מעצמה כובשת ומיישבת ולא עם משועבד בארצו הפורק מעליו עול זרים הקימו את ישראל. Not a superpower which occupied the land of Israel, and not enslaved people which rebelled and released himself, built Israel. No. בראשית תקומתנו היה החזון, he says. In the very beginning of our redemption, there was the vision. חזון הגאולה המשיחי. The messianic redemption or redemptive, whatever, חזון הגאולה המשיחי, vision, right? הזיקה הנפשית העמוקה למולדת הקדומים של ישראל וללשון העברית שבה מתחבר ספר הספרים, the deep contact or attachment to the Hebrew language, to מולדת הקדומים, to the land of Israel, to our homeland, to the Hebrew language in which the book of the books, the Bible, was written. These were, אלה היו המעיינות העמוקים והנאמנים שמהם שאבו פזורי ישראל בגולה מאות בשנים את הכוח המוסרי והנפשי לעמוד בכל קשיי נחב וגולה ולהתקיים עד בוא הישועה העולמית. Which means what have strengthened us along the hundreds of years or 2,000 years of exile was our attachment to the vision of the land of Israel, to the Hebrew language, which we kept in our prayers and Torah learning and so on, and the book, the Torah, the Bible. This what strengthened us to survive the exile and to reach this redemption of today. And he continues in another paragraph. גם אם תגדל המדינה שבעתיים, לא נגיע לתחנה האחרונה של חזון הגאולה. Even if we will double the territory of our state twice. If we will expand everything, many times, we will not reach the last or the final station of the redemption vision. Which means he also didn't think that establishing a Jewish state is the last stop. This is just the beginning. This is the opportunity enabling the Jewish people now to start to create, to really fulfill the multidimensional Torah, as we speak of the Torah, the multidimensional Torah in a multidimensional reality. Only a sovereign people, only a sovereign Jewish people can control its destiny, its fate, and can shape its culture, its education, its way of behavior as a society, as a responsible society, which is responsible to all aspects of life. For example, when we live in a community, wherever we live, in the diaspora, we live as Jews, as faithful and loyal Jews, as committed Jews. We observe the mitzvot, those who observe. We educate our children in light of Jewish values and Jewish norms, commandments, and so on and so forth. We teach Torah. And we are in charge of various aspects of our communal life. Culture, education, services, welfare, or gmach, gmilut chesed, within the community. There are dimensions in which a community which is not sovereign cannot act, cannot be responsible for, cannot be in charge of. For example, for me, and here I speak in the name of myself, but I think these thoughts are in a way implications of all what we have discussed here this evening. Rambam, Rav Kook, Ben Gurion, Rav Soloveitchik, no matter who. For me, fulfilling Judaism, being a Ben Torah today in the modern sovereign Jewish state means trying to run a country, a modern state, with all its implications in all areas of responsibility in light of the values of the Torah. This is a new and very courageous and very challenging vision, because to run a country in which we have to run a national budget, for example, national economy, and we should make considerations how to divide our resources, in light of which values. We could have a capitalistic approach, of course, because we live in a democratic state and a free market, and we live in a global village, and we have to take into account and consider all kinds of global, economical, political considerations, for sure. But yet, is there an additional consideration that we should take, that we should make, while we are planning our policy in the area of economics, in a sovereign Jewish state? Should we consider a set of values that usually in regular states they don't take into account? I think the answer is positive. Or in another area, how should we manage our defense forces? Now, for the first time in history, the Jewish people has such might that we never had in the past. We can build, we can construct, we can support, we can develop, and we invest in this in Africa, in Asia, in many, many countries. And we can be a role model of, you know, progress and flourishing and innovation and so on and so forth. Startups, startup nation, you know, and all very interesting and positive things. But at the same time, we have the ability to destroy the entire Middle East. It's a great responsibility, which Jews have never had in the past. How should we evaluate what to do, how to act, in light of which values? Do we try to see in our Torah, in our tradition, a source of inspiration for running a modern, sovereign Jewish state? I don't speak of a Medinat Halacha, a theocratic state. Not at all. I don't want to see it. This is my personal approach. But I think that as a Jewish state, we should listen to the voice of the Torah, of our classical sources. There is a lot to learn from it. I'll conclude with one example just to make it more concrete. Okay? There is a whole debate today about the justification of the State of Israel managing operations like Tzuk Eitan in Gaza, right? After 14 years of rockets to Sderot and the Kibbutzim and all the Yishuvim there, we responded. And we responded in a very efficient way. And of course, there are lots of wounded and dead people in Gaza, over 1,500, unfortunately. And there are less, Baruch Hashem, in Israel, a few dozens. Of course, because we use our rockets to defend our people, and they use their people to defend their rockets. But this is another issue. The question is, to what extent are we allowed to shoot, to a target from which they shoot to us missiles or rockets, if we know that there are civilians, uninvolved people there, innocent civilians there? It's a big question. And in the whole literacy, juridical literacy, and political science, and so on and so forth, they didn't come yet to a conclusion which relates to the new condition in the battlefield. Because we face now not a regular war between two armies, but we have to respond to terror attacks from civilian areas. So how can we defend ourselves? The only criteria that is used today in the juridical discourse in the world, in the West, is the concept of innocence. If the people are innocent, you shouldn't shoot them. At least you have to try. And of course, we have to try to do our best not to hurt innocent people. But I think, based on our halachic tradition, that there is another category that we should, another criteria that we should use in these circumstances. I wrote an article about it, about purity of arm and purity of moral judgment, in which I brought a very interesting source from the Tractate of Sanhedrin, Maschiach Sanhedrin, about a new concept which could help us in this discussion. You know the concept of rodef, pursuer. Din rodef. So the pursuer, the rodef, is by definition not innocent. Right? By definition. And you may kill him, you should kill him in order to avoid the murder that he wants to commit. Right? Of course you should do it in a way that you try at least not to kill him if you can. But if not, you are allowed to kill him in order to avoid the murder. He is by definition not an innocent person. But there is an innocent rodef, an innocent pursuer in the halacha. Do you know about it? An innocent pursuer. And the Gemara brings it very explicitly. An embryo before birth who endangers the life of the mother. Right? And the doctor has to decide now the life of whom to save. A tragedy. Right? A tragedy. And this baby, this embryo, of course, he is not, he's an innocent. Absolutely innocent. But he is a pursuer according to the halacha vis-a-vis the mother. So I use this concept in order to argue that the question in this discourse of the battlefield, of morality in warfare in Israel and in the entire world, should not be only the question to what extent the other side is innocent, but to what extent the other side endangers us, our lives. And this is a moral category, which I took from the Talmud. And I taught it in the IDF, in the army, to officers, to commanders. They should have the tools, conceptual tools, to know how to act, and also to advocate later on, right? And to explain what was their consideration. But this is just one small example of issues, problems, challenges that we have in a sovereign Jewish state, which a Jewish community in the diaspora doesn't have and will never have in these circumstances. To live and to run To live in Israel and to run a Jewish state means to execute the entire dimensions of the Torah in political reality. To try to be Jewish in the political realm, in shaping our policies as a state, as a Jewish state. And this is a challenge that we should yet work on, because we are far away from the fulfilling of the potential of this great vision, but yet there is a way to walk to, and there is a lot to do, and it's a very challenging challenge. Vision.